one boat against another. You're trying to outmaneuver them. You're trying to make your boat go faster than their boat. Once you get it all down pat and everything's working well, it's really fun to do well.
There was a railroad that came from Philadelphia through New Jersey into Seaside Park and up into Point Pleasant. Much of the membership at that point came from Philadelphia and Moorestown and Mount Holly and along that trail in New Jersey and the main line, Philadelphia. In fact, the first Commodore of the club was actually the mayor of Philadelphia.
The building itself, the original building, I believe was one of the buildings from the World's Fair in Philadelphia. And they transported the building by barge across the bay. Urban legend says the barge ran aground and they meant to get to the land, but they didn't reach the land, so they put it on pilings on the water. I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but I love the story.
I am fourth or fifth generation. My great-great-grandfather was one of the original signers on the charter for the club. So that's how my family got involved.
The club was incorporated in 1899 with the mission to promote yachting and rowing, to foster athletic sport upon the water, and to promote the general prosperity of Seaside Park. And I think that it has very successfully done all of those things over the years.
I've been a member basically all my life. There used to be big hotels up on the ocean fronts. My grandfather used to bring his family down there. Then his two boys got interested in sailing and were hanging around the yacht club a lot. So they decided they'd buy a couple lots across from the yacht club and build a couple houses and make Seaside their sort of permanent summer residence.
The bridge that brought the railroad tracks across the bay burned, and they never rebuilt it. And just about the same time, that was actually 1957, the Parkway and the Turnpike and the whole transportation system in New Jersey, north-south, was being developed. And what happened to the membership as a result, by the mid-50s into the 60s, more of the membership came from North Jersey and New York, and less came from, Philadelphia and Western New Jersey. That started to shift south as the southern beaches developed. And so general transportation did have a pretty big impact on the club membership.
There's no substitute for time in the boat, I can tell you that. It's practice, practice, practice. I was fortunate to have good instructors at various times in my development. I just kind of took to it, and the friends of mine that took to sailing, Peter Saya, I learned from Gary Saya and so many others, both here and all over the bay. But it was always about, if you want to be a good sailor and you just get out there in any kind of boat you can, and any kind of wind. Don't be afraid of strong winds. Even get out there when you think the wind is too light. I'm learning that lesson to this day, because it's difficult to go out and practice when there's hardly any wind, but sometimes you have to go out and race in those conditions, so you've got to do it.
BBYRA, the Barnegat Bay Yacht Racing Association, is very unique. We have 13 competing clubs on Barnegat Bay, and Barnegat Bay is from here to Bay Head, approximately 8 miles away, 9 miles away on the bay, and there's 13 clubs within that area that we all compete. Every Saturday we compete against each other in various classes of boats.
Primarily focused ever since on sailing for Seaside at the Barnegat Bay Yacht Racing Association, which is a 10-week series, and that has been really my summers for probably the last 40 years.
And sailing's a different form of competition. You're not only competing against other sailors, you're competing against the weather and the conditions, which down here sometimes get really dicey.
When it was coming into October and I was really down to the end of my time as Commodore and saying, boy, that was great. There was not really a big incidents, always little minor things that you deal with. October 29th, 2012, before the end of my term, we had a great storm called Sandy that came and blew through the club.
I just finished my term as Commodore of the BBYRA last year, and that was a 7-year run of a similar flag officer ride, and that was a real privilege to represent this club for the Bay, and I attribute that to, there was a guy here when I was growing up, Mr. Brooks, who lived on a boat on the south side of the marina. To me, he was Mr. BBYRA when I was a kid, and I spent so much time talking with him on his boat or on the porch here, and he would just tell me stories and guide me about various aspects of sailboat racing, and 50 years later, I was climbing that same ladder to be the Commodore of the Bay, and I just couldn't be prouder of all of that.
As a young child, I came into the club, and there was a junior board where we had a junior Commodore, vice Commodore, treasurer, and we used to raise money, have club dances. So I got involved with that as a junior. My sister was also involved with, as were a lot of my friends. And then through the years, this is a club of volunteerism. If you don't volunteer, you really don't feel like you're part of the club. Everybody chips in, whether it's cleaning up in the spring or putting it away at the end of the year or running an fair. It's all volunteerism.
Being a Commodore at the club is a privileged position that you're voted into by your fellow members, but it's not a position that one does all by themselves. This is, as I said, a great club of volunteers, and there's so many different volunteers that are involved with, whether it's the house committee or the bar committee or the marina committee or the regatta committee.
The problem with motorboat racing, a lot of my friends were getting killed in the sport. It was kind of a dangerous sport and extremely expensive. So we won the national championship in powerboat racing. We were winning worlds, and we crashed. And then we decided to stop racing, and then we switched over to sailboat racing.
Oh, there's a great story about my dad in junior sailing, because he started as a young child here, and they used to put on a play. And one year at a general membership meeting, we were talking about the history of the club and the people that had been here for so long and believed in, and their families believed in it. And they asked everybody in the room to stand up if they were part of the Peter Pan production. And half the room stood up. These were kids that started sailing, and they were now in their 60s and 70s. And they stood up, that they had been around that long.
I look forward to my grandkids becoming members in the future. As I mentioned, they're already sailing. A couple of them are already sailing. My children love it here. It's just the love for the place and the love for Seaside and the membership that's going to keep this place surviving.
It's the place and it's the people. I mean, it's our second home, or maybe our third home for some people, but I think of it as my second home.
It's home. This is home for me. This was home for me when I was a young child, and we would pull in on Sunday mornings. My father would give us 2 quarters each so he could go out sailing and we could get a yoo-hoo on the soda machine at the end of the porch. That's all we knew, was Sundays were spent here.
Many people here are members who are boaters or sailors, but there's just as many more people who are here for the society of the club.
Social life at the yacht club here has been so beneficial.
Every year, on Labor Day weekend, when it's either called Bay Day or Race Day, when all of the clubs on the bay, the 14 BBYRA clubs, all converge here for the award ceremony for the summer season's racing. That's always, every year, just a really fun, great event.
The highlight, certainly, of the summers, the last race of the season is at Seaside. The awards are at Seaside, which is just so special because you've got all your friends here. There's a massive crowd of people, massive amount of boats. It's a great party on Saturday, and they hand out the awards for the season. Win, lose, it doesn't matter.
Been a member since 1964, so that's about 55 years. So there's a lot of good times, a lot of very special memories that hard to single out, but mostly having to do with sailing and the people that I met over the years from sailing. Had a lot of great sailing events here that I've been part of. To me, they've all been special. 3
of my father's best friends, my father had passed when I got married, and 3 of his best friends walked me down the dock to give me away. They were all his sailing friends from the beginning at Seaside Park.
I remember as a kid coming over here, the second there was any kind of thunder, we would zip over on our bicycles and go up on the second deck and watch the lightning hit the bay. And that was always an exciting occurrence.
I remember as a kid, my brothers had Hobie cats on the beach. And just on Sunday afternoons when the south wind was blowing strong, we would take turns reaching across the bay back and forth. And those of us who weren't sailing were just having a great time on the porch, watching.
My fondest memory is my wife and I were both in the sailing program together. I was 5 years ahead of her, but I knew her family well, and we ended up getting married. So it's my fondest memory.
How did you get started with the club?
Oh, do you want the real answer, or you want I was conceived on the 4th slip on the North Dock? Because that's the true story.